I've brought this S-Works SL2 Tarmac back to life after I found it on eBay for just over £300. But was it worth the effort of saving? What hidden problems did this bike have? And how much did it really cost? I've condensed what was about 5 hours worth of work into less than 15 minutes. So sit back, relax, and watch this bike go from being a has-been to a must-have. Of course, at first, I want to start by removing all of the big components and the things that are easy to get to. There is a lot of glue and old bar tape adhesive left on these handlebars. It's going to take a lot of cleaning to make those right again. And that continues, so once you get the wheel out, then you want to remove the chain and the chain set. That's where you start to break out specialist tools. But from there again, it continues. You just want to keep removing components. And at this point, I was just trying to remove all of the cables so I could get rid of the brake calipers and the derailleurs. It was at this point that I learned that my cable cutters are absolutely terrible. I think they're better suited to crimping cable ends than they are actually cutting cables. So I'm definitely going to need a new set of those. Well, this is the beautiful thing about an externally routed bike, is that all the cables are insanely easy to get to. They're all just right here. It's great, I love it. Once I got the cables free, I then actually had to remember how the heads came out of the shifters. I tell you what, it has been a while since I decabled a bike, so this was a nice little refresher. But then once those cables were out, I was then able to get rid of the brake calipers, I was able to remove the brake pads and the derailleurs. If you watched my first video on this bike, you might remember that I mentioned that I was getting quite a strong burning smell coming from the brakes when I spun up the wheels and then applied the brakes. And when I removed the brake pads, I found out why, and it was because the brake pads were absolutely covered in pieces of metal shrapnel. And I think that's what was contributing to that smell. So when all of those metal shards were making contact with the rim, not only would it have been wearing the rim down, but I think it was also generating that smell. Right, next up, I need to find out if this is a British or an Italian thread. I'm pretty sure it's a British thread, but I just want to be sure. So I've already got the non-drive side a little bit loose, but after that, I want to check the non-drive side and just make sure that when I order a new bottom bracket, it's definitely the right one. So non-drive side, as we can see, undoes beautifully easily, but we'll take this side out. Of course, a little bit grimy, but that's okay. The non-drive side is actually feeling pretty smooth, but we'll take this one out. There we go, that's one cup removed. And now, I think this is English, so I guess it's not lefty-loosey, it's lefty, well, it's righty-loosey. Let's give it some welly. Yes, there we go. Nice. Nice. And there we have it. Wow. That bottom bracket shell is looking very good. It's looking very clean. I'm very happy to see that. Next job, I'm going to order a new bottom bracket. I'm going to order a new set of cable cutters because mine are rubbish. I'm going to order a set of new frame stickers, but I'm also going to go over the whole bike now, clean it up. There's a lot of stickers on here that I want to get rid of. And yeah, hopefully we can get to a bit of a ground zero and see what we're actually dealing with. I brought the hairdryer out because a lot of those stickers were clearly very old and quite brittle, so by warming them up ever so slightly and very gently, I was able to loosen up that adhesive underneath and then peel them away from the bike without damaging any of the paintwork. And I didn't put it onto the highest temperature, it was just on that middle setting, but it just meant that those stickers were much easier to loosen up and then peel off. There were so many stickers on this bike and so many of them were kind of browned and aged, that once you remove them, it made the bike look so much better. The chainstay protector especially was particularly bad because it ultimately had actually done its job, because it was really cut up from absorbing all of those chain strikes. But removing it then becomes really difficult because the chainstay protector now is ultimately just a whole load of little pieces of plastic all stuck to the frame. So once I removed the one larger piece that was remaining, all of those other little pieces did take quite a while to pick off. But once I had removed what was left of the chainstay protector, the chainstay itself and the paint was looking really good. So it had done its job, and if you have a beaten up chainstay sticker on your bike, then go grab your hairdryer and get that thing off and replace it, because these things take a battering, but they do such a brilliant job. And I think it's one of those ones that you want to do before you really need to do it. Once all those stickers had been removed, the frame was still covered in sticky residue. So I busted out the Wonder Wipes. They are said to remove grease and grime quite effectively. So I scrubbed the entire frame down with them. I did have to scrub a little bit more than I was necessarily expecting, but I think they did work pretty well. Okay, this is looking so much better. After cleaning off all of the dirt, you can actually get a much better sense of any frame damage. And I have spotted a few bits. So there is a bit of an abrasion to the paintwork down here. I imagine that's probably where the outer cable has been rubbing on the frame. There is a... where was it? Aha, yes. Underneath this rainbow stripe, again, there's another abrasion there. Not too sure what's happened, but again, just on the paintwork, which is good. There's a couple of little abrasions here to the paintwork. Again, surface level, so I think we're doing pretty well. And I think in terms of the actual paint damage, that's it. And again, when I look really closely at those bits of paint damage, it is just the paint, and the carbon underneath has not been compromised at all. So that fills me with a lot of confidence. There are, of course, quite a few other kind of nicks and grazes, but other than that, it's actually in much better shape than I thought it would be. Now that the frame was entirely clean, I could actually turn my attention to some of the components, and the handlebars were absolutely the worst offenders. Whoever had wrapped the bar tape had clearly not cleaned the bars before they re-wrapped them, because there were layers and layers of glue and residue on those bars. So I took the time to actually properly clean them. I think this might have been about 20 minutes worth of scrubbing to get everything off, but it was fully worth it. Once those bars were done, I could then move across to the wheels. I could strip those down, get rid of the tyres, get rid of the cassette, and clean up those rims, clean up the spokes, and access the hubs. Again, another brilliant opportunity just to inspect the components, and I was really happy with how these wheels felt. Next up, it was the turn of the chain set, and if you're going to clean a chain set properly, you really do have to take it apart so you can get into all of the nooks and crannies. Now, what I've done here is I've taken a washing up bowl, I've half filled it with some lukewarm water, and then added some muck off bike wash concentrate, and then I've just got busy with a toothbrush scrubbing everything down and allowing all of the components just to soak in that liquid just a little bit. Really helps soften it all up and makes the cleaning process a lot faster. But once I was done with the toothbrush, I then moved back to the Wonder Wipe to give them an extra scrub, and they came out looking much better than they did before. Right then, it's been a few days since I last filmed with this bike, and when you last saw it, I was cleaning it, and to be honest, I have been cleaning it ever since. You'll notice that I did go further, and I did remove the stem, and I've since taken out the headset. I gave the bearings a feel and they were surprisingly smooth. However, I have ordered some replacements because I thought, why not? They weren't that expensive, and I do want to do just a really decent job on this bike. I now have the bottom bracket, I now have all the parts, and this bike and its components are finally clean after all of that scrubbing. So the rebuild can finally begin. You can see that the bike isn't very stable in the stand at the moment, so I'm gonna get the headset in, I'm gonna get the stem on, and then I'm just gonna keep on building. And hopefully we will have something that resembles a bike pretty soon. Right, let's talk about money. How much did this bike cost to bring back to life? Well, it needed quite a few parts. Here you can see everything that I replaced or serviced, and at full retail price, that's over £500 of parts. However, we all know that if you search around on the internet, you can always find things on sale. So after doing that digging, I was able to find much better prices for everything, and that knocked off £200 in total. However, before I started this project, I did reach out to a couple of my contacts in the cycling industry and I asked them if they would be interested in supporting this project with some of these replacements. And luckily, I was able to get many of the serviceable parts for free because the cables, the pads, the chain cassette, inner tubes tyres and saddle were gifted to me. That meant that I was left to buy the headset, the bottom bracket, the frame stickers, the bar tape and the shifter rubber replacements. That left my total parts bill at £75. When I combine that with the cost of the bike and the cost of the wipes that I used, that creates a grand total of £465. Now, I think this bike is potentially worth somewhere in the region of £500 to £600. And since I was able to lean on some of my industry contacts to get those parts for free, when I sell this bike, I will be donating all of the profits to World Bicycle Relief. Because if I'm able to pay that kindness forward, then I see this project as being a resounding success. I think this project took me in total about 5 hours end to end, and that's from stripping it down to cleaning it to then rebuilding everything. Your average shop mechanic will be able to do it a lot faster than that. Of course, everything slows down as soon as you try and film a bike build. But if we consider that most shops probably charge their mechanics time out at anywhere between £50 and £75 an hour, I think this job in reality should take a skilled mechanic around 3 hours. You could be looking at a labour bill from between £150 to just over £200. To do this project, if you weren't to do the work yourself, you could be looking at a total cost of £700–800. At that point, is it worth it? I think that's a really hard question to answer because it really depends what you want from a bike. At that level, you can find some other brilliant things already on the market, and you're also getting very close to the price of a new road bike. However, this is an S-Works bike and this is a bike with a full Dura-Race group set. So it's really up to you on what you prioritize. Do you want that retro, old school cool thing, or would you rather have something a little bit more modern, but with lower tier components? The bike is now starting to take shape a little bit more, and I wanted to run you through some of the components and the spec choices. So I have changed the cassette and I went for an Ultegra 1128. That is a direct replacement for what was already on the bike. I did go for an Ultegra bottom bracket. And the tyres I did switch. Before there were some very worn Continental GP5000s, but I've switched these to some Pirelli P0 tyres, and these are the 26C width. Inside those tyres are some Pirelli tubes. The saddle as well was from Specialized. I believe it was a Specialized tube, but now it's a Physique Tempo Argo R5 with alloy rails. The cables that were on the bike were standard stainless steel. I actually think they were Jaguar cables. However, now I've replaced the bike with Dura-Race level cables. What separates standard cables from Dura-Race cables is that the Dura-Race cables have a special coating on which reduces friction within the cable housing. The chain and brake pads are of the Dura-Race level, and soon I'll be fitting some BBB bar tape. It's their foam bar tape, which I think feels really nice, and it wraps really nicely because it's got quite a lot of give in it. Sadly, I wasn't able to find genuine Shimano Dura-Race 7900 shifter rubber replacements, but I did find some third-party ones which I will aim to fit. And that pretty much sums it up. I've tried to retain as many of the original components of the bike as possible, like the seat post, the handlebars and the stem, because I think that really makes up what this bike is. And as you'll see soon, I think it came out looking pretty good. My answer to the question of was it worth saving probably won't surprise you. Of course it was. Anything to put an SL2 back on the road and give it a fresh lease of life is worth doing. However, that wasn't the best thing about doing this job. It was incredibly refreshing to work on a bike with fully external cables. It was brilliant being able to just fit an inner tube rather than needing to set these wheels up tubeless. It was great not having to route hydraulic hoses and then bleed them. And it was even better not needing to pull my laptop out to run software updates on an electronic group set. Clearly, simple, late noughties road bikes are the most therapeutic bikes to work on. Well, there we have it. I am so pleased with how this bike came together. This is going to be a really tough one to say goodbye to. Of course, if you are interested in the bike, then shoot me an email. My address is down in the video description. And if you want to see more videos like this, then let me know which bike you think I should track down next.